There's a quiet battle happening inside every single one of us right now. And most people don't even realize they're losing it. You see, we spend so much time trying to control the world around us, our careers, our relationships, our reputation, our image. We obsess over what people think, what they say, how they respond. But there's one thing we ignore, the one thing that determines everything else, our mind. And if you don't learn to master your mind will master you. Not in some dramatic, obvious way. It won't come crashing to your life and announce itself.
No.
It's far more subtle than that. It whispers, it convinces, it repeats, it plants seeds of doubt, fear, insecurity. And then it sits back and watches as those seeds grow into decisions that shape your entire life. That voice that tells you you're not ready, that you're not good enough, that you should wait, that you should play it safe, that voice isn't truth. It's conditioning. It's years of experiences, failures, judgments, comparisons, all mixed together and replayed in your head until it sounds like fact. But it's not. And here's the problem. Most people don't question it. They hear that voice and they obey it. They shrink when they should step forward. They stay silent when they should speak. They quit when they should persist. And then they wonder why their life doesn't change. Because the greatest limitation you will ever face is not outside of you. It's not your circumstances. It's not your background. It's not your resources. It's the story your mind keeps telling you. And until you take control of that story, nothing changes. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where you were about to do something bold, something meaningful, something that could change your life, and right before you did it, something inside you pulled you back? That hesitation, that second guessing, that sudden wave of doubt, that's your mind trying to protect you. But here's the truth nobody tells you. Your mind is not designed to make you successful. It's designed to keep you safe. Safe means familiar. Safe means predictable. Safe means staying exactly where you are, even if where you are is making you miserable. So every time you try to grow, every time you try to step into something bigger, your mind resists. It tells you, this is dangerous. What if you fail? What if people judge you? What if you're not enough? And if you're not aware of it, you believe it. You back down. You delay. You convince yourself you'll try again later, but later becomes never. And that's how dreams die. Not because people aren't capable, but because their mind convinced them they weren't. Mastering your mind doesn't mean silencing those thoughts completely. That's impossible. They will always be there. Mastering your mind means recognizing them without obeying them. It means understanding that just because you think something doesn't make it true. Think about that. If every thought you had was true, then every fear would be real. Every doubt would be fact. Every insecurity would define you, but they don't. They only have power if you give it to them. And most people give it to them without even realizing it. They wake up already defeated. Before they even start their day, their mind has already told them they're tired. They're behind. They're not doing enough. They're not where they should be. And so they move through life carrying this invisible weight, this constant pressure, this quiet anxiety that never leaves. Not because their life is falling apart, but because their mind is. So the question isn't, how do I control everything around me? The real question is, how do I stop my mind from controlling me? And the answer starts with awareness. You have to start noticing the voice, not fighting it, not suppressing it, just noticing it. Because the moment you become aware of it, you create space between you and it. And in that space, you gain power. You begin to realize this is just a thought. It's not who I am. And that changes everything, because now instead of reacting automatically, you can choose your response. And choice is where your freedom lies. But here's where it gets difficult. Awareness is the first step, but discipline is what sustains it, because your mind will not give up control easily. It will test you. It will come back stronger. It will find new ways to convince you to stay the same. And in those moments, you have to decide who's in charge. You or your mind. That decision has to be made over and over again. When you feel like quitting, but you keep going. When you feel afraid, but you take the step anyway. When your mind tells you you can't, and you say, watch me, that's mastery. It's not one big moment. It's thousands of small decisions made consistently. And here's the part most people don't want to hear. It's uncomfortable. Mastering your mind is not peaceful at first. It's messy. It's frustrating. It's exhausting. Because you're breaking patterns that have been running your life for years. You're challenging beliefs you've carried for a long time. You're stepping into uncertainty. But on the other side of that discomfort is control, real control, not over everything that happens, but over how you respond to it. And that's what changes your life. Because when you control your response, you control your direction. And when you control your direction, you control your future. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem calm under pressure, focused in chaos, confident in uncertainty. Do you think they don't have fear? Of course they do. The difference is they don't let their fear decide for them. They feel it, but they don't follow it. They've trained their mind to work for them, not against them. And that's available to every single one of us. But it requires something most people avoid: responsibility. It's easy to blame circumstances. It's easy to blame other people. It's easy to say, this is just how I am. But the moment you take full responsibility for your mind, everything shifts, because now you're no longer a victim of your thoughts. You become the observer, the decision maker, the one in control. And control doesn't mean perfection. You will still have bad days. You will still have negative thoughts. You will still feel doubt. But those things won't define you anymore. They'll pass without taking you down with them. And that's the difference. That's what separates people who stay stuck from people who grow. It's not intelligence. It's not talent. It's not luck. It's the ability to master what's happening inside. Because if you can win the battle in your mind, you can face anything outside of it. But if you lose that internal battle, nothing external will ever be enough. You can achieve success and still feel empty. You can reach goals and still feel unfulfilled. You can have everything and still feel like you're not enough. Because your mind doesn't care about your achievements. It cares about your beliefs. And if your beliefs are broken, your reality will always feel incomplete. So the work is internal. It's daily. It's intentional. It's choosing what you focus on. It's choosing how you interpret situations. It's choosing what meaning you give to your experiences. Because meaning is everything. Two people can go through the same situation and walk away with completely different outcomes. One sees failure. The other sees a lesson. One sees rejection, the other sees redirection. One sees an ending, the other sees a beginning. Same event, different minds. And that difference shapes their entire future. So if you want to change your life, start by changing how you see it. Start by questioning your thoughts. Start by challenging the stories you've been telling yourself. Ask yourself, is this really true? Or is this just something I've repeated so many times it feels true? Because the moment you challenge a limiting belief, you weaken it. And the moment you replace it with a stronger one, you empower yourself. But it requires consistency. You can't do this once and expect everything to change. You have to do it daily, moment by moment, thought by thought, because your mind is always active. And if you're not directing it, it will direct you. That's why so many people feel stuck. Not because they don't have opportunities, but because their mind keeps them in the same patterns, same thoughts, same reactions, same results, different days, same life. And they don't understand why. It's because nothing changes until you do. And change starts here, not out there, here, inside your mind. So take a moment and ask yourself, what thoughts have been controlling me? What beliefs have been holding me back? What stories have I been telling myself that are keeping me small? And more importantly, am I willing to challenge them? Because that's where your power begins, not when everything is perfect, but when you decide to take control anyway, when you decide that your mind will no longer run on autopilot, when you decide that your thoughts will no longer define your actions, when you decide that you are in charge, and that decision repeated daily changes everything. Because the truth is, your mind can be your greatest asset or your greatest enemy. It can build you or break you. It can push you forward or hold you back, but it cannot do both at the same time. So you have to choose every day, every moment, who's in control. Because if you don't master your mind, it will destroy your potential quietly, slowly, without you even realizing it. But if you do master it, if you learn to direct it, challenge it, discipline it, there is nothing you cannot face, nothing you cannot overcome, nothing you cannot become. And it all starts with one decision: to take control before it's too late. What you repeatedly think you eventually become, not because of some abstract philosophy, not because it sounds good in a quote, but because your mind is constantly shaping your identity in ways you don't even notice. Every repeated thought is a signal. Every signal becomes a pattern, and every pattern over time becomes your reality. You don't wake up one day confident. You think your way into confidence. You don't suddenly become insecure. You think your way into insecurity. You don't accidentally become disciplined or distracted, focused or lost, strong or weak. It all begins in the same place, what you allow to repeat in your mind. The danger is not in one negative thought. The danger is in the repetition of it, because the first time you think something limiting, your mind questions it. The second time it considers it. The third time it starts to accept it, and eventually it becomes a belief. And once something becomes a belief, it no longer feels like a thought. It feels like truth. That's when it becomes powerful. Because now you're not just thinking, I'm not good enough. You believe it. You're not just thinking, I can't do this. You identify with it. You're not just thinking, this is too hard. You live it. And the moment a thought becomes part of your identity, it starts controlling your behavior without resistance. You don't try as hard. You don't push as far. You don't take the risk, not because you consciously decide not to, but because your mind has already decided for you. That's how quiet this process is. No noise, no warning, just repetition turning into identity. And most people never question it. They accept their thoughts as facts, their beliefs as permanent, and their identity as fixed. But none of it is fixed. It's all built. And if it's built-y, it can be rebuilt. The same way repetition created the current version of you, repetition can create a new one. But this is where responsibility becomes uncomfortable. Because if what you repeatedly think shapes who you become, then you can no longer blame your circumstances for who you are. You can no longer say, this is just how I am, because what you are is the result of what you've been repeatedly telling yourself. And that's not easy to accept, because it means change is in your control, and control requires effort. It requires awareness. It requires discipline. It requires you to interrupt patterns that have been running for years. Think about how often your mind runs on autopilot. You wake up, and before your feet even touch the ground, your mind has already started its routine. It reminds you of what's wrong. It reminds you of what's missing. It reminds you of what didn't go your way. And because you've thought those thoughts so many times, they feel natural. They feel automatic. They feel like you. But they're not you. They're habits, mental habits. And just like any habit, they were formed through repetition, which means they can be broken the same way. But here's the challenge. Breaking a mental habit is harder than breaking a physical one, because you can see a physical habit. You can feel it. You can measure it. But thoughts are invisible. They happen quickly, quietly, constantly. And if you're not paying attention, they control you without resistance. So the first step is not to change your thoughts. The first step is to notice them, to slow down enough to hear what your mind is saying on repeat. Because whatever is repeating is what is shaping you. If your mind constantly says, I'm behind, you will live like someone who is behind. If your mind constantly says, I'm not ready, you will act like someone who is not ready. If your mind constantly says, I can't, you will never try long enough to prove that you can. Not because it's true, but because repetition makes it feel true, and feelings drive behavior. So if you want to change your behavior, you have to change what your mind is repeatedly feeding you, but not with empty positivity. Not with forced affirmations you don't believe. That doesn't work. Your mind is too smart for that. If you tell yourself something that feels completely disconnected from your reality, your mind will reject it. So the goal is not to lie to yourself. The goal is to train yourself to gradually shift the direction of your thoughts, from limiting to constructive, from destructive to empowering, from automatic to intentional. And that takes consistency, because you are not just changing thoughts, you are rewiring identity. You are creating a new internal environment. And that doesn't happen overnight. It happens through repetition. The same force that shaped you before now working in your favor. Imagine this. Every thought you repeat is like casting a vote, not for who you are today, but for who you are becoming. One vote doesn't decide anything. But thousands of votes create a result. So every time you think, I'll try again, every time you think, I can learn this, that's a vote. Every time you think, I'm improving, that's a vote. And over time, those votes begin to outweigh the old ones. The old beliefs start to weaken. The old identity starts to fade. And a new version of you begins to take shape, not because you forced it, but because you reinforced it. That's how powerful repetition is. But here's the part most people miss. It's not just what you think when things are going well. It's what you think when things are falling apart. That's where your real programming reveals itself. When you fail, what do you tell yourself? When you're rejected, what do you believe? When things don't go your way, what story do you repeat? Because those moments carry more emotional weight, and emotional weight strengthens repetition. If you fail and tell yourself, I'm not good enough, that thought hits deeper. It sticks stronger. It repeats louder. But if you fail and tell yourself, this is part of the process, you weaken the negative loop. You create space for growth. You protect your identity from collapsing under pressure. And that's what mastery looks like. Not controlling every thought, but choosing which ones to reinforce. Because thoughts will come and go. You don't control their arrival, but you control their stay. You control which ones you repeat, which ones you dwell on, which ones you build your identity around. And that choice repeated consistently determines who you become. So if you look at your life right now, your habits, your confidence, your discipline, your results, they are not random. They are the reflection of your most repeated thoughts. If you don't like what you see, don't just change your actions. Change the thoughts that are driving those actions. Because action without mental alignment doesn't last. You can push yourself for a while. You can force discipline temporarily. But eventually your mind pulls you back to what feels familiar. And what feels familiar is what you've repeated the most. So if you want lasting change, you have to make the unfamiliar familiar. You have to repeat new thoughts until they feel natural, until they feel like you, until they become automatic. That's when change becomes sustainable. That's when effort turns into identity. That's when discipline turns into who you are, not something you struggle to maintain. And that's when everything shifts, because now you're no longer fighting yourself. You're aligned with yourself. Your thoughts support your actions. Your beliefs support your goals. Your identity supports your growth. And when that alignment happens, progress becomes inevitable, not easy, but inevitable, because you are no longer divided. You are no longer being pulled in two directions. You are moving forward fully, and it all started with something simple. Paying attention to what you repeat in your mind. So from this moment forward, listen carefully, notice the patterns, catch the thoughts that keep showing up, and ask yourself, is this helping me become who I want to be or keeping me where I am? Because every repeated thought is a decision, a quiet one, but a powerful one. And over time, those quiet decisions shape everything.